tie in consent to almost anything. So even in terms, okay, so, this might be, it's very topical, but Billy Bush was recently let go from the Today Show.
That's right.
As an interviewer. And when that story came out, I was torn in a few ways because as an interviewer, I've been in the realm where I was hired by a company to go interview someone. And so often celebrities don't want to talk because they want to have some sort of privacy in their lives. But then our job is to get some sort of, not dirt, not necessarily tabloid kind of things, but you do want them to feel comfortable enough that they'll talk and give you whatever information that they choose to.
Right.
In that realm, I do understand in a way why Billy Bush, I don't condone his behavior and laughing and kind of egging him on, but in some ways on a level in terms of a reporter or interviewer, if someone's just giving you information, you might not know how you'll use it later, but it's like, wow, if I begged some people, they would never be that not forthright, but that candid about their actual feelings or things they might do in their lives.
Right.
And so, again, I'm not saying it was a good thing, but in a way, I mean, anyway, I don't mean to get into politics, but when the Billy Bush thing happened, I definitely, as an interviewer, put myself in that place, and I maybe would have said something. I might have said something off camera or later, but there's another part as my job as an interviewer to, get that dirt. And honestly, as if I was working for a tabloid, that's the kind of stuff you absolutely want, because that's the stuff that again becomes a scandal that could influence people in a very good way. And actually, that's information I think we should have. I mean, it all ties in together.
If it's the truth.
Right, if it's the truth. I mean, but the thing is if someone's saying it out of their own mouth,
right.
I mean, what better truth is there?
Right.
It's someone saying it. And so for me, either way, whether it's Trump or Billy Bush or anyone, I think it's important that we hear the truth so that just even with interviews, celebrities, people in our personal lives, people we date, the truth is very important so that we can make assessments and make decisions that are going to help us and not hurt us in the future, regardless of whether it's an election, a relationship, dating, or what have you.
Okay, now we're interviewing right now. I invited you to come to this interview.
Yes.
As by nature of inviting you for this interview, are you giving me implied consent to actually air any or all of this footage? I mean,
this is
in different
great.
realms, because it could be that you don't want this seen back home because there's something we talk about that could be detrimental to you.
Sure.
But you're fine with it being aired here. And I can see celebrities, to their credit, being under the understanding that you're only going to share something in a certain realm.
But here's the difference.
Okay, go ahead.
And this is great. I'm so glad you brought it up because I'm actually working on a book right now in the realm of consent. There is a chapter or a part of a chapter that will deal with the assumption of consent. So, I agreed to do an interview with you. If say you were in Los Angeles coming on my radio show, I would have had you sign a release form prior to the interview.
Should I have had you sign one today?
You could have. Okay. I'm okay with everything you can air. You have my permission.
You got that on camera?
Yes.
She's okay
I'm
with
giving
it
her
all.
my consent.
Okay. What's your social security number?
Right. Off camera, I'll tell you.
Okay. All right.
So I'm giving Molly my consent right now. You have my consent. You can edit this however you'd like, and you can use it, and I will share it and all these things. But for me, and just because, especially California is such a litigious state.
Yes.
Everyone I know who works in entertainment or does something where they're interviewing people has at least one sheet of release form contract kind of a thing, and possibly multiple sheets of information because they just want to protect themselves. So if you were to come on my show, my release form would basically say something like, you're giving me your consent, permission, authorization to use any and all of the footage. Which with, maybe Trump signed that with Billy Bush. And so, there was no need really to release it before, but then someone was like, oh, well, maybe we should release this now. And if something was signed, if he signed something saying, yes, you have my permission to use it, and even if he didn't know the audio was running, then he signed away his consent. So that's why it's always important to be aware of what you're saying and how you're acting around people, because you just never know, especially in this day and age where I mean, everyone's has some sort of iPhone or camera phone or something. I mean, that's a whole other realm though, because you still should have someone's permission, but you just never know what's being filmed, or so for me it comes down to basic, like, how do you want to be seen in this world? What image are you putting out there for yourself? What kind of human being do you want to be in this life? What kind of human being do you want to be, and how do you want people to perceive you in this world, especially when it comes to interpersonal, closer relationships, romantic relationships, all of that stuff. So in the realm of consent, I think one of the problems we make, especially in dating and relationships, is we make a lot of assumptions. This person, and we could go to, Brock Turner, Stanford swimmer who was accused of sexual assault and rape. He made assumptions about what she didn't do to stop it, even though she physically couldn't stop it. And he made assumptions and acted accordingly. That's not okay. So the assumption of consent is a really big deal in the realm of consent. And so it's really important to point out that never make an assumption about consent. It doesn't matter if someone's body language is telling you something. It really is. Right now, at this time in 2016, it's really at a point where we really need to be clear that you have a verbal yes. I won't say you can't go wrong with a verbal yes, but the chances are higher that everything's gonna be kosher if you have a verbal yes from someone.
Definitely. I read that recently California enacted some legislation as of January 1st, 2016, that health education has to include a number of topics which involve sexual assault education, domestic violence education, the laws regarding sex. In fact, I saw somewhere in legislation that there is a yes means yes. It used to be no means no. They say no, stop. Isn't it? But now they switched it around to yes means yes. And you made an important comment. You said yes should be pretty safe. Should be a pretty good green flag. But what are some cases, in your opinion, where yes is not a green flag?
Well, I mean, the first one that comes to mind in regards to where yes is not 100% the answer is if someone's drinking. If there's any sort of drug use, I don't condone drug use, but I mean, it happens. So, the thing that some of my colleagues and I have discussed is, when does the yes, when you're, say, like 100% sober, and then you have like a drink or a beer or something, does that consent you gave at 100% sobriety, is that invalid now? So, I mean, and that was a yes at one point in time during an encounter or what have you. So when does that become invalid? My colleagues and I are still evaluating that. I have not come to a definitive answer with that. But it's all evolving right now, which is, and again, I think that's great, because again, I feel like my colleagues and I have seen more constructive conversations around consent in the last year than I think I've ever had, whether it be in school, even in my early years in dating coaching, etc. So anything that could make you intoxicated, that's when the yes becomes more cloudy and gray. So, I mean, I've had colleagues and I, and we were kind of joking around and stuff, but it's like, if you were intimate with someone, does that mean that every single move you make, you say, okay, consent, 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 consent? Maybe, I don't know. But at the very least, I think it's important that we all check in with our partners. So if you're checking in, and I don't mean, for those of us who aren't sexually active, it could even be as much as a kiss or holding a hand even. Yes. I have friends and colleagues in Los Angeles who they don't like physical touch. So for someone to reach out and hug them without asking them is very triggering for them. So it's just very important that we be aware and not assume, again, the assumption of consent. Assume that everyone wants a hug, that everyone wants a kiss, that everyone wants you to grab their hand and kiss their hand. Yes, nice gestures. I don't mind that personally, but you don't know. So it's important to ask. And, an easy way to role play would be, for example, I'm trying to think how I can role play with you without it being weird. Okay, I could be like, oh, Molly, thank you so much for this interview. I'd love to shake your hand. Could I shake your hand?
Sure. That'd be great.
And then she says yes. It's literally that simple. So whether it be handshake, hug, kiss on the cheek, hand, kiss on the mouth, and beyond. It's about getting that okay. Because really, you're just protecting yourself too. And by the way, it doesn't just go one way. I feel like, of course, because I'm a woman, I do go more to the gender of woman being more, I guess, in the victim place. But that's not true. I mean, I have male friends and colleagues who've said that they've been assaulted by women and men. It's not just, the opposite gender all the time.
Good point.
Yeah, and it's really important that, again, that it's not, I think so often with so many things in our society, it's more about what we want personally, about self. What do we want? What do I want? And it's like, okay, if we could take ourselves out of that I place for a little bit and see, okay, how does this make that other person feel? Or, if I was that person, how would I feel about that? And going a little bit deeper, with all the locker room talk and all of that, it's interesting how, and I will go back to men in this instance, because most of the people, so I've had some women say, oh, it's not a big deal to me either. Most of the men I've heard who haven't had a problem with it, let's say, if I reversed it to them and said, what if a man did those things to you as a man? Yes. Immediately there's a different reaction. Right. And for me, that's why it's not okay. Because it shouldn't matter about the gender. If any person is doing something like touching you inappropriately or those kind of things, you think it's okay in one scenario, but then if you put yourself in that scenario where you might feel uncomfortable and it freaks you out and it's triggering and not okay, that's confirmation that something is wrong with that. But again,
it reminds me of sexual harassment.
Absolutely.
The eye of the beholder, or my experience with you may be completely consensual.
Right.
I shook your hand, it was completely consensual.
Right.
But I have no right to assume that the next person is going to want the same thing.
Or the next time I see you,
or the next time I see you.
Right.
I can't just grab your hand.
Right.
Right. And so each time it's important to get a clear yes, clear acknowledgement, clear yes. Make sure the person is lucid.
Absolutely.
And that they're in the right mind to be able to actually give their yes.
Right. And sometimes it's hard to see. Sometimes it's hard to see if somebody, because a lot of times, especially like, I work with college students. With college students, people will say, oh, I'm fine, I'm okay, but we don't really know that they are. So it's more about I have a colleague that's like, if there's doubt, then don't. Doubt means don't. If you have doubt that someone is fully coherent or fully lucid or fully sober, then don't do it. It's not worth it. It's just not. And we should, I feel like just as thinking beings, it shouldn't be like the threat of litigation should make you not violate someone's boundaries. But maybe that is the thing. Maybe that's the thing to stop some people. The fact that if you don't know and someone could, press charges against you, then is that boundary pushing or sexual encounter worth it? Is it? Is it worth it? And most times it shouldn't ever be. No one should want to give up their freedom for this possible thing that is maybe okay, but I don't know, but I'm just going to go for it. That shouldn't be a conversation at all, really, in my opinion.
That's right. So. Makes a lot of sense.